I don't want money, I just want to be hugged like I'm your daughter. The words slipped from Mia's lips so softly, so sincerely that for a moment Charles Whitmore forgot how to breathe. He had held billion-dollar contracts in his hands, negotiated mergers with titans, and stood before presidents without flinching. But saw a 7-year-old black girl in a faded sundress, with braids tied by mismatched ribbons and eyes too wise for her age, left him speechless. He had stopped by Rose's Diner on a whim, one of those dusty roadside places off Highway 12 that still smelled like bacon grease and fresh biscuits. It was the kind of place that reminded Charles of the world before boardrooms and bank accounts, when life was simpler and kindness didn't come with a receipt. The waitress who brought his coffee was young but tired. Her name tag read Alana. She moved with a gentle weariness, and he noticed her smile seemed rehearsed, polite, practiced. It was Maya, the little girl who hovered quietly behind the counter, stacking napkins with intense focus, who caught his eye. Charles watched her from afar for a while, noticing how she looked after the other patrons, even bringing water to an old man whose hands shook too much to pour his own. She had a smallness about her physically, but something old in her gaze, something familiar. When Charles finished his meal, he slipped a $100 bill from his wallet. Really, he had always believed money fixed things, soothed discomfort. He bent down, holding the bill out to Maya with a warm smile. "For you, sweetheart," he said. But Maya shook her head. She didn't even glance at the money. "I don't want that," she said quietly. Charles blinked. "No, you sure? It's yours." She hesitated. Then, with a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "I don't need money. I just want to be hugged like I'm your daughter." The diner seemed to fall into a hush. Even the clink of silverware against plates faded. Alana dropped the dish she was drying. She rushed over, eyes wide with alarm. "Maya, don't say things like that. I'm so sorry, sir. She doesn't mean." But Charles lifted a hand gently to stop her. "It's all right," he said. His voice, usually firm and businesslike, sounded different now, softer. "May I?" Maya nodded slowly. He knelt awkwardly at first. It had been years since anyone had hugged him without wanting something in return. Years since he had held his own daughter, Eliza, his little girl with freckles and the biggest laugh in the world, gone too soon in a car accident on a rainy Georgia road. But now here was Maya, the same age Eliza would be now. And when she stepped into his arms, tentative and shy, something inside Charles cracked open. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to let us know. Scroll down and share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in the power of kindness and connection, like this video and subscribe for more stories that matter, brought to you by BUP Stories. Your support helps us keep telling them. She smelled like syrup and sunshine. Her small arms wrapped around his neck with a trust that was both heartbreaking and healing. He held her, not briefly, not politely, but like someone who hadn't been held in years. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were wet. Maya smiled up at him. "You hug like a real dad," she said simply. Charles laughed, a choked sound caught between joy and grief. "I used to be," he said, brushing a tear from his cheek. Alana stood nearby, arms crossed, unsure whether to cry or interrupt. "Sir, I didn't mean for her to say anything strange. She's lost her dad young and sometimes, I understand," Charles said gently, rising to his feet. "Truly, I do." There was a pause. Then he turned back to Maya. "Would you like to sit with me for a bit? Maybe share a slice of pie?" Mia's eyes lit up. She looked to her mother for permission. Alana hesitated. "Just for a moment," she said finally. "And only if she doesn't bother you." "She won't," Charles said. "She might just remind me of what matters." And so, in a booth tucked into a corner of a forgotten diner, the billionaire and the little girl sat side by side, sharing a warm apple pie and laughter. Strangers watched, puzzled, touched. But for Charles Whitmore, it was the first time in years that something made sense, more than stocks, more than deals, more than titles. A little girl asked for a hug, and he gave her what he didn't know he had left. The pie between them was half eaten, but neither Maya nor Charles seemed to notice. She sat across from him, legs swinging beneath the booth, her sneakers barely brushing the floor. Charles leaned slightly forward, arms resting on the table, watching her talk about her school, her favorite cartoons, and the stray dog she and her mom had secretly named Marshmallow. "And he always comes by the back of the diner," she said proudly. "He waits for me. Like really waits. I give him the crusts from my sandwiches." Charles chuckled. "Smart dog. That's the best part." Maya's eyes sparkled. "You think so, too?" "Absolutely," he nodded. From behind the counter, Alana kept a cautious watch. Her arms were folded tightly, worry etched into every line on her face. She'd been serving coffee and pancakes for years, and nothing about powerful, wealthy men lingering with her daughter gave her comfort, no matter how gentle he looked right now. But when Maya laughed again, freely and fully, she hesitated. Charles caught the glance. He stood, excused himself softly, and walked over to Alana. "I just wanted to say thank you for allowing her to speak with me," he said, voice low. Alana didn't smile. She wiped her hands on a dish towel. She's not used to men paying attention. Not like that. Most ignore her. Some. She paused. "Well, you know how people are." Charles nodded slowly. "I do." "Her dad Marcus died in a refinery accident," Alana said, surprising herself. She didn't know why she was telling him this. She was 3. She doesn't remember much, just his cologne and how his beard tickled her cheek. "I lost my daughter," Charles said quietly. 6 years ago, she would have been about Maya's age. Alana's eyes softened slightly. "I'm sorry." "So am I." There was a beat of silence. The clatter of dishes and low murmur of the other customers returned like background music. "I don't know what she saw in you," Alana said at last. "But that girl has a radar for people. She trusts slow, but when she does, it's real." Charles looked back at the booth. Maya was now humming to herself, arranging the napkins into odd little towers. "I didn't expect her to say what she did," he admitted. "It startled me. She says what she feels. Always has. Makes people uncomfortable sometimes." "No," he said softly. "It made something heal." They returned to the table. Maya smiled up at her mother, who gave a small nod. She turned to Charles. "Can I tell you a secret?" she whispered. Charles leaned in. "Of course. You're my first grown-up friend who doesn't talk like a robot." He burst out laughing, the sound loud enough to make a couple in the next booth glance over. "Well, I try. I've been called a lot of things, but never a robot." Maya leaned closer, lowered her voice even further. "You have sad eyes, but not mean sad. More like lost in the woods sad." Charles blinked. She looked down. "Sometimes I get that too when I miss Daddy or when Mama's sad and tries to hide it." He reached out, hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. Her fingers were tiny, warm, trusting. "You're very brave, Maya," he said. She shrugged. "Nah, I just feel stuff." Charles felt the room blur slightly. The light seemed dimmer, the clink of plates more distant. In that moment, he wasn't Charles Whitmore, the tycoon, the mogul, the ghost of Wall Street. He was just a man who had lost too much too soon, and had forgotten what it meant to feel without strategy or shield. "I have a place," he said suddenly. "Up north. Big house, too quiet. Would you and your mom ever want to visit? There's a huge garden and I think Marshmallow would love the space." Alana stiffened. "Sir, I'm not offering charity," Charles interrupted gently. "Just a visit. Maybe some fresh air and company. I think we could all use a little of that." Maya looked at her mother, eyes hopeful. "Can we, Mama?" Alana hesitated. This man was a billionaire, a stranger, and yet something about his tone, his manner, or nothing about him, felt threatening. Still, the world had not been kind to women like her. She'd learned to survive by saying no first and trusting later, if ever. "I'll think about it," she said cautiously. "That's all I ask," Charles replied. Then he pulled a pen from his coat and scribbled something on a napkin. "My number if you change your mind." Maya pocketed it like treasure. As Charles walked to the door, he paused, looked back. Maya was waving with both hands. He lifted his fingers, trembling slightly. Driving away from Rosa's diner, Charles didn't turn on the radio. He didn't check his phone. For the first time in years, he simply drove, window cracked open, wind threading through his thinning silver hair. He thought of the warmth of Maya's hug. He thought of her calling him a real dad. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't feel quite so lost in the woods anymore. The following morning, Alana stood in front of the stove in her tiny apartment kitchen, flipping pancakes while Maya chattered at the small table with a stuffed rabbit perched beside her plate. The air was filled with the warm smell of cinnamon and butter. But Alana's mind wasn't on breakfast. She kept thinking about the man from the diner, Charles Whitmore. She'd known who he was the second he walked in. You didn't grow up poor in America without knowing the names of the men who owned the buildings you cleaned, the banks that denied your loans, or the hospitals you couldn't afford. But Charles had surprised her. He hadn't looked through them or down on them. He'd listened. He'd seen Maya, and Maya had seen him right back. Alana poured syrup onto Mia's plate, then sat down across from her. "Sweetheart," she said slowly. "About yesterday." Maya looked up, mouth already sticky. "Yeah, you remember the man, Charles?" Maya nodded enthusiastically. "He was nice, and he didn't smell like money. He smelled like old books." Alana blinked. "Books?" "Yeah," Mia said with a shrug, "like the ones in the library no one checks out." Alana smiled despite herself. "Okay, baby. But listen, I want you to be careful with people, even nice ones. Sometimes people don't stay nice when you ask them for things they didn't expect." Maya chewed thoughtfully. "I didn't ask for anything, Mama. Just a hug." Alana reached across and tucked a braid behind Mia's ear. "I know, and that's what makes it beautiful. But the world, it doesn't always understand that kind of honesty." Mia tilted her head. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby," Alana whispered. "You did something brave." That afternoon after the lunch rush, Alana wiped down the counter at the diner with more force than usual. She didn't see Charles walk in until his reflection appeared in the chrome coffee machine. "Good afternoon," he said, voice calm, hands in the pockets of a simple tan overcoat. No assistant, no security. Alana straightened. "You came back." "I did. I owed you both more than just an unexpected goodbye." She nodded, eyes wary but not closed. "We're not a charity case, Mr. Whitmore." "I know that," he said. "I came because yesterday reminded me of something I lost, and I wanted to say thank you for Maya and for not throwing me out when she asked what she did." Alana softened. "She doesn't usually take to people." "She took to me," he said, a little amazed. "You remind her of her father," Alana said, then paused. "Not in looks, in feeling. He was quiet like you, always thinking." Charles looked down. "I've spent years not feeling anything until she said what she did." There was silence between them. Not heavy, but honest. He reached into his coat pocket and placed an envelope on the counter. "This isn't money for you. It's a scholarship voucher for Maya. A private program funded by my foundation. She doesn't have to use it now or ever, but it's there." Alana's hands froze over the cloth. "You did all this overnight?" Charles looked slightly embarrassed. "I called in a few favors. Maya's bright. She deserves opportunities. That's all I'm trying to give." "She deserves a stable home, too," Alana said, her voice shaking slightly. "She deserves a father who's here." "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I didn't say you were." Charles exhaled slowly. "Look, I won't push. I'd like to keep seeing her. As a friend." Alana studied him. Then, with a sigh, she picked up a pen from the drawer and wrote something on the back of a receipt. "My day off is Sunday. She usually goes to the park around noon. Charles took the note, nodded with quiet gratitude. Thank you. Sunday came crisp and sunny, the kind of day that made even the city's cracked sidewalks feel cheerful. Maya sat on the swings at the park near their apartment, kicking her feet higher and higher until her braids flew behind her. Charles arrived without ceremony, wearing jeans and a windbreaker. He stood by the fence, watching for a moment, then called out, Maya. She jumped off the swing midair and ran to him. I wasn't sure you'd come, she beamed. I gave you my word, didn't I? He said. She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the sandbox. Let's build a castle. I want to show you how we make the towers stay up. For the next hour, Charles got sand in his shoes, his watch, and possibly his soul. He laughed when Mia scolded him for building the walls too thin and let her crown him king of the playground with a paper Burger King crown she found in the trash bin. Alana watched from a bench nearby, arms wrapped around herself. For the first time in a long while, she saw her daughter laugh like nothing in the world could break her. Later, Charles walked Mia home while Alana trailed slightly behind. You know, Mia said, swinging their joined hands. You're not as sad today. I guess I'm learning, he said, smiling. Want to know a secret? She whispered. Of course. I think Daddy sent you, she said matter-of-factly. Like an angel, but with money and a funny laugh. Charles stopped walking, looked at her. You think so? She nodded. You feel safe like he did. He knelt, looked into her face. I promise, Maya. No matter what happens, I'll never let you feel like you're alone again. And for the first time in a very long time, Charles Whitmore meant every single word. By the time fall settled into the city, the leaves in the park had turned crisp and golden. Charles and Maya had met nearly every Sunday since their first visit, and a quiet rhythm began to form. They built sand castles, shared stories, laughed about squirrels stealing peanuts. Sometimes Charles brought old children's books he had saved from Eliza's room, and Maya devoured them like candy. Each week, her questions grew bolder, her hugs tighter, but nothing escaped Alana's watchful eyes. That Sunday, as Maya ran ahead to feed ducks near the pond, Alana approached Charles, arms folded across her sweater. She's growing attached, she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Charles nodded. So am I. Alana studied him. You planning to be here a while, or just until the novelty wears off? I haven't planned anything in years, he admitted. But I know I want to be here. She softened slightly. That's a start. Oh, just then Maya returned, holding a plastic container of breadcrumbs. The baby duck followed me. I think he thinks I'm his mom. Charles knelt, amused. Maybe he does. Maya giggled and plopped down between them. You and Mama should talk more. You're both too quiet when I'm gone. Charles smiled. We're trying, little one. But outside the park, ripples had begun to form in waters they couldn't yet see. At Whitmore Enterprises, the boardroom buzzed under high ceilings and polished walnut. Seated at the head of the table, Robert Lang, chief operating officer and Charles's longtime advisor, flipped through a manila folder with growing concern. Across from him sat Marla Jennings, head of PR, her expression tight. He's spending time with a waitress's kid, Mara asked. More than that? Robert replied. He's been seen leaving her neighborhood on Sundays. There are photos, no security, no press clearance, just him and this child. Mara sighed. We've kept his personal life spotless for years. He can't afford this right now. Not with the education fund launch next quarter. Robert stood, walking toward the glass wall that overlooked the skyline. It's not the child I'm worried about. It's the perception. You think it's a PR stunt? She asked. I don't think he sees it that way, but the media might. Mara frowned. What do you want me to do? Quiet surveillance, background checks on the mother, financial records, family history, anything that could become a liability. We'll position it as due diligence. Mara hesitated. You sure that's wise? Robert's tone cooled. I'm sure we protect the man, the brand, and the billions that rest on his image. Back in Alana's apartment, Maya lay sprawled on the floor coloring while Charles read from a worn book. Alana was on the phone in the kitchen whispering. "I don't know, Shayla," she said to her sister on the other end. "It's weird, but it's not creepy. He's good to her. Better than most men I've known. And what if it's temporary?" Shayla's voice crackled. "What if he ghosts y'all? That girl's heart is already halfway in his pocket." Alana closed her eyes. "I know, but I can't tell Maya who to love. And something in him, he's broken, too. She sees it. You don't owe that man healing." "I don't, but Mia might have given it anyway." 2 nights later, Charles returned to his penthouse and found Robert waiting. "You look like you've aged 10 years, Charles muttered. "I've been doing damage control," Robert replied, setting the manila folder down. "We have photos. Press is sniffing around." Charles raised an eyebrow. "You had me followed." "We follow everyone connected to the foundation." "Alana and Maya are not a project," Charles said, his voice low. Robert didn't flinch. "Then what are they?" "Because the board needs to know where your focus is, Charles." Charles stared at the city lights outside. "My focus is on what matters." "For once, there are whispers already," Robert continued. "People think you're planning to adopt, that you're being manipulated." Charles turned. Manipulated by a child who asked for a hug. Robert was silent. Charles stepped forward, picked up the folder, and tossed it into the fireplace. It caught instantly, flames crackling. "If I have to choose between that girl's trust and a dozen board seats," he said, "I'll take the girl." The next morning, Alana opened her front door and found a sleek black sedan idling across the street. A man in a tailored coat stood beside it holding a briefcase. He nodded politely. "Miss Alana Davis?" he asked. "Yes, I'm with Whitmore Enterprises. We'd like to speak with you about your relationship with Mr. Whitmore." Hesh Tonk. "What kind of relationship?" she asked carefully. "We're conducting a security audit for the foundation." "Routine." "Routine doesn't come with briefcases and men in suits." He smiled without warmth. "We'll take a moment." Maya appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. "Mama, who's that?" "No one, baby, go get your shoes." The man's gaze lingered. "Cute girl." Alana stepped forward, voice low. "You tell Robert Lang to back off. Charles is here because he wants to be. And I won't let your people make Ma feel like she's a problem." The man's smile didn't change. "Have a good day, ma'am." As the car pulled away, Maya returned hugging her rabbit. "That man smelled like the hospital," she said. Alana blinked. "How do you even know that?" "I just do," Maya said. Alana hugged her tightly. She wasn't sure what game was being played now, but she knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't take this safe space away from her daughter without a fight. Not even if that fight came from inside Charles Whitmore's empire. The rain began mid-morning, tapping lightly on the diner's windows like fingers eager to be heard. Inside, the aroma of sizzling bacon mixed with fresh coffee, but Alana barely noticed. She wiped down the counter for the third time, her mind spinning with worry. The suited man's visit hadn't been a warning. It had been a threat dressed in politeness. Maya was in the back booth coloring again, head bent, tongue peeking out in concentration. A man at the far end of the diner reached for his check, but Alana missed his signal. Her eyes kept flicking toward the door, waiting. Charles walked in 15 minutes later, umbrella dripping, his coat slightly rumpled, an unusual sight for a man usually polished like marble. He saw her face, the tight line of her mouth, and didn't speak until she waved him behind the counter into the kitchen. "They sent someone," she said without preamble, "to my apartment. A man in a black car with a briefcase and too many smiles." Charles's expression darkened. "They crossed a line." "You think?" she snapped, then caught herself. She turned away, gripped the sink. She was scared. "I was scared." "I didn't authorize any of it," he said. "Robert's behind this. He thinks he's protecting me." He's not, she said. He's hurting us. Charles nodded slowly. I'll fix it. You keep saying that, she said, turning to him. But this isn't your boardroom, Charles. This is my life, my child. She doesn't need whispers in cars watching her walk to school. He looked genuinely stricken. I never wanted any of this to fall on you. I know, she said softly. And that was worse. Because it meant she still wanted to believe in him. They returned to the dining room. Maya looked up and beamed. Hey, did you bring a book? Charles sat beside her. Not today. I thought maybe you'd read me something. She grinned, flipping through her notebook until she found the story she'd written. The Girl Who Could Hug Sadness Away. As she read aloud, Charles leaned back and let her voice wash over him. Each word, imperfectly spelled and purely felt, worked its way into the cracks of his heart. When she finished, she looked up at him expectantly. What do you think? I think it's the best thing I've ever heard, he said. Better than television, mukba. Alana watched from behind the counter, arms folded, heart torn. She wanted to pull Maya close and tell her this couldn't last, but she couldn't bring herself to be the shadow over her child's sunlight. That night, Charles returned to his penthouse and found Robert waiting again. This time in the study. You sent someone to her house? Charles asked, tossing his coat aside. Robert stood calmly. Routine audit. Due diligence. You lied to her. You intimidated her. I protected you. Charles walked to the bar, poured himself a glass of bourbon, but didn't drink it. You humiliated a woman who has never asked for a thing. You scared a child who trusts me. Robert didn't flinch. This girl is not your responsibility. She's more than that, Charles said. She's a reminder of what I lost, of what still matters. Charles, listen to yourself. You're attaching everything you never got to finish with Eliza onto this child. That's not fair to anyone. Charles turned slowly. It's not about Eliza anymore. Maya is real. She's here and she needs someone who won't flinch when she asks for something simple like a hug. Robert sighed. You're unraveling. I've seen it before. No, Charles said, setting the untouched glass down. I'm finally finding the thread. 2 days later, Maya sat on the living room rug piecing together a puzzle. Charles had stopped by, bringing hot cocoa and a rare smile. He watched her, then glanced up as Alana joined him on the sofa. She's happier, he said. She's always been full of joy, but lately it's deeper. He nodded. Do you trust me? Alana hesitated. I want to. Then come with me, both of you, just for a weekend. I have a place by the lake. Quiet, safe, no board members, no cameras. She looked unsure. I've never left the city since Maya was born. Maybe it's time. She studied him. And if we go, then we let the world be quiet for a few days. Just that. She finally nodded. One weekend. On Friday, they packed a duffel bag with clothes, books, and Maya's stuffed rabbit. Charles drove them in a silver SUV, no driver, no escort, through winding roads and orange-dusted trees. The lake house appeared like a dream out of nowhere, 2 stories, cedar-lined with white windows facing the water. Mia gasped as they pulled up. It looks like a fairy tale. Alana helped her out of the car, scanning the quiet surroundings. No reporters, no suits, just wind and trees and space to breathe. That evening, they sat around a fire pit, toasting marshmallows. Maya curled between them, humming softly. Charles looked up at the stars. I bought this place after Eliza died. Never used it much. Alana glanced at him. Why not? Too many echoes, he said. Now it doesn't feel so empty. They were quiet for a long time. Then Maya whispered, Can we stay forever? Charles smiled but didn't answer. The truth was, he wanted to say yes, but he knew the world would come knocking again soon. Still, for tonight, under the blanket of stars, with the fire flickering and the sound of Maya's breath soft and even, it felt like forever could begin here. And maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of stillness that only nature could provide. No horns, no sirens, just the rustle of leaves and the distant call of loons on the lake. Inside the lake house, the scent of pancakes filled the air while sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting golden patterns on the hardwood floor. Charles stood barefoot in the kitchen, flipping pancakes on a griddle he hadn't touched in years. He wore a worn flannel shirt, sleeves rolled, face relaxed in a way his boardroom never allowed. When Maya skipped in, still wearing her bunny slippers and an oversized sweater, he smiled. "You're up early," he said. "The trees woke me up," she said, climbing onto a stool at the kitchen island. They were whispering. Whispering? Huh? What did they say? She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "They said, 'Thank you for bringing me here.'" Charles chuckled. "Well, I'll make sure to say, 'You're welcome,' when I water them later." Alana joined them a few minutes later, wrapped in a soft shawl. Her eyes looked rested in a way they hadn't for years. She paused at the kitchen doorway, just watching her daughter giggle as Charles handed her a stack of uneven pancakes shaped like clouds and fish. "You've got syrup on your nose," Charles said, tapping Mia's face gently with a napkin. There, pancake emergency averted. Maya beamed. "You're not bad at dad stuff, you know." Alana tensed slightly, but Charles only smiled. "Well, I had a good teacher. She just didn't get to teach me long enough." Maya tilted her head. "You mean your daughter?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Her name was Eliza." "Do you miss her?" "Every day," he said. "But it doesn't hurt the same when I'm with you." There was a pause, and then Maya reached out and gently touched his hand. "Maybe she's happy you're not so alone anymore." He swallowed hard. "Maybe she is." The day passed slowly, beautifully. They went down to the lake and Maya spent hours skipping stones with Charles while Alana sat on the dock dipping her toes into the water. The wind carried laughter that echoed off the trees and Charles found himself thinking of how the silence he once feared had been filled so easily with stories, questions, tiny hands grabbing his for balance. Later that evening, they cooked dinner together, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup at Mia's request. As the sky darkened, Alana played an old Sam Cooke record on the turntable in the living room and Maya twirled barefoot across the floor. Charles watched them dance, smiling. "This feels normal," Alana said, stepping beside him. "Like something we weren't allowed to have before." "You're allowed now," he replied. She looked up at him. "You sure about that? Even with your world watching us like a hawk?" He sighed. "They can watch, but they don't get to decide anymore." "I don't want to wake up and find out it was just a dream," she whispered. "It's not," he said, voice firm. "I won't let it be." They sat together on the porch after Maya went to bed, each holding a mug of tea. Alana looked out over the lake, its surface smooth as glass. "She loves you," she said. "I know," he replied softly. "You love her, too." He nodded, like she's always been there. Alana hesitated. "And what happens when this ends?" "I don't want it to," Charles said. "Not now. Not ever." "You want to adopt her," she said. "Not as a question." He turned to face her. If you'd let me, not to take her away, but to be part of something real again, to give her the name, the protection, everything she deserves." Alana looked down at her tea, hands trembling slightly. "I swore I'd never let anyone replace Marcus. He was good, kind, the only man who ever saw me without asking for something." "I'm not asking for anything," Charles said. "Except the chance to love her and to be better for both of you." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "Yes, I do," he said gently. "I've lived with absence for too long. I'm ready to choose presence." She wiped her cheek. "Then we'll talk slowly together." He nodded. "Together." Inside, Maya stirred in her sleep, clutching her rabbit close. She mumbled something unintelligible, then smiled, still dreaming. Outside, on that quiet porch overlooking the lake, two people sat side by side, no longer strangers bound by coincidence, but something deeper, something stitched together by loss, by laughter, by love. In that moment, Charles felt it. Not the weight of his fortune or the pressure of his name, just the quiet, steady promise of a family taking root in the soil of second chances. They returned to the city on Sunday evening, the late autumn sky casting long shadows over the apartment buildings as Charles helped carry the last of Mia's things up the stairs. Mia clutched his hand the whole way, chattering about her plan to build a cardboard castle in the living room and how maybe, just maybe, they could paint a moon on the ceiling. Alana unlocked the door, her smile quiet but real. The apartment, though small, felt warmer than before, as if the lake house had followed them back, tucked into their pockets and hearts. But peace rarely stays long when power has unfinished business. Monday morning, the news broke. It began as a headline buried deep in a finance column. Whitmore's mysterious companion, billionaire, seen frequenting diner in Southside, spotted with child. By midday, the story had spread like wildfire. Pictures of Charles and Maya in the park, at the diner, holding hands, laughing. The speculation was cruel. Is this philanthropy or paternity? Billionaire's secret life, father figure, or PR facade? From tragedy to tenderness, Whitmore's redemption or risk? By evening, news vans lined up outside the diner. Reporters swarmed the sidewalk. Cameras shoved at the windows. Customers stopped coming. The bell above the door went silent. Inside, Alana sat at the counter, face pale, eyes vacant. Maya stood behind her, silent for once, holding tight to her mother's apron. Charles pushed through the crowd and stormed in. "I'm so sorry," he said, rushing to them. "I had no idea they'd take it this far." Alana didn't answer. She just handed him the newspaper, her hand trembling. He scanned the headline and exhaled sharply. This wasn't supposed to happen. "You think that matters to them," she said, her voice low, cutting. "You think they care about what's supposed to be? I'll fix it." "You can't," she said. "You're Charles Whitmore. You walk into a room and people stop breathing. I walk into a room and I'm just another waitress with a child too curious for her own good." "Mama." Maya's voice was small. Alana turned, dropped to her knees, held her daughter close. "It's not your fault, baby. None of this is your fault." Charles crouched beside them. "Please let me protect you." We need time," Alana said. He looked at her, eyes burning with helplessness. "Take all the time you need. Just know I'm not walking away." He stood slowly and left, parting the crowd outside like a stone dropped into water. That night, the diner closed early. Alana pulled the blinds, turned off the lights, and unplugged the phone. In the dark, she sat at the table with Maya curled against her. "Are they mad at me, Mama?" Maya asked. "No, sweet girl," Alana whispered. "They're scared of things they don't understand. But you did nothing wrong. Will I see Mr. Charles again?" Alana hesitated. "I don't know." Maya was quiet a long time. Then she whispered, "I hope so. He makes the air feel lighter." The next day, Charles stood before his board. He looked every inch the mobile, crisp suit, silver hair, cold fury in his gaze. "Who leaked the photos?" he asked. Silence. Robert Lang cleared his throat. "It was an associate from our communications team." "They acted independently." "Under whose instruction?" No one spoke. Charles set the newspaper on the table. "You've embarrassed a child. You've endangered a woman who has done nothing but show kindness. And you've tried to turn my life into a PR campaign." Robert stood. "With respect, Charles, your choices have consequences. You're not just a man anymore. You're a brand, and the brand has rules." "I'm not a brand. I'm a father who lost his child. A man who found a reason to breathe again. And if protecting that child costs me this chair, this company, so be it." He stared them down. "I won't apologize for loving her." The room remained silent. Then he turned and walked away. 2 weeks passed. The reporters moved on. The headlines faded, but the quiet